coming and especially thank the Morrisons for hosting this over here and getting everything ready, and it's a lot of work, and we really appreciate it. Okay, so the name of the baby is Amital Colores, and it is in honor of 3 of our great-grandparents. Both of the great-grandmothers whom I knew growing up were named Anne. That's where Amital comes from. In Hebrew, one was Chashka and one was Chana, but I called them Savta and Jibabi, and everyone knew them as Nancy. And Liliana's great-grandmother was named Dolores. In Spanish, Dolores means pains or sufferings. So we chose to adapt the name to make it more optimistic and colorful. Hence, colores, which means colors in Spanish. Okay, so here's some Torah. In the Haftarah for Yom Kippur morning, the Jews of Isaiah's time ask him why God doesn't seem to respond to their fasts. And Isaiah responds, Hen biyom chem timtzeu chefetz v'chol atzvechem tingoshu. Hen l'riv umatzah tatzumu la'akot be'agrof rasha. Behold, in the day of your fast, ye pursue your business and exact all your labors. Behold, ye fast for strife and contention, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. So I don't know exactly what was going on, but I think one possibility is that the Jews of that time thought that business and money trumps everything, and that they can make money off of oppression. It's okay to oppress people in order to make more money. Thankfully, no one thinks that nowadays. Maybe they were investing money with others who were oppressing people. I don't know, maybe they justify this by saying they had material needs. I need this, I need that, and so it's okay for me to oppress people. And so I think, and Isaiah speaks against this practice. And I think that Sukkot also comes to teach us that this is not the way to think about things. It's kind of a rebuke to that attitude. So in particular, our material needs might not be what we think. So in Sukkot, we're commanded to move out of our houses and into a sukkah. And that teaches us a little bit about what our material needs really are. And, you know, in fact, some of us might live the whole year in huts, and some of us might live the whole year in nice houses. But in Sukkot, we all live in huts. We all recognize that our wealth is not what makes us great, and it doesn't really matter. We depend on God. And so creating wealth doesn't make us great. It's not an end into itself, and it doesn't justify oppression. I was a little late to shul yesterday, and so I was praying by myself in this other room, and I heard some people learning Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. Apparently he says something very similar I was overhearing while I was davening, and he in fact connects it to the lulav and etrog, which we just waved upstairs. It's these shrubberies that we take and wave around. It says, in taking them, it says, Ulakachtem lachem. The Torah says, Ulakachtem lachem. Acquire for yourselves. So in regards to the lulav, acquiring is not bad. In fact, in this case, it's a mitzvah. So acquiring things isn't the problem. But the message is that we only take the lulav after having fulfilled the mitzvah of the sukkah. After having lived in the sukkah, then we can start acquiring again. Because we can only start acquiring after we realize that our physical needs are provided by God and not by us. And only then can we acquire for the sake of God. This framework does not leave much room for acquiring through oppression. But how do we know if we are oppressing? So this is where the name Amital comes in. So here's the history of the name. Yehuda Klein, having survived the Holocaust, made Aliyah, moving to Israel, fought in the Israeli War of Independence and become a great Torah scholar, made the name up for himself. It means my nation is due. And it comes from the verse in Micah, which says, Vayasherit Yaakov b'kerev amim rabim ketal me'et Adonai, ki revivim ale esev asher lo yikavel le'ish v'lo yeyachel livnei adam. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, as dew from the Lord, as showers upon the grass that are not looked for from man, nor await it at the hands of the sons of men. So dew is water that condenses on cold grass in the nighttime. So it gets cold and the water condenses on the grass. And it's kind of always there, especially in the summertime. In Israel, there's no rain, but there's always dew. But it's subtle, and it's reliable, and it's lowly. And indeed, so the idea is that our nation, in some sense, will emulate dew, will be like dew. And I think the sense is in humility. In fact, the same Haftorah from Yom Kippur starts off with a powerful statement. It says, God says, Marom v'kadosh eshkon v'et daka ushval ruach. I dwell in the high and holy place with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit. So God, as great as God is, God dwells with those who are contrite and humble. And so we, as also in particular, as a nation of Torah, our Torah learning should respond to the needs of the low down. And Rav Amital, who he came to, as he came to be known, he was the leader of the yeshiva where I studied in Israel. He was famous for insisting that the study hall have windows so that the Torah would respond to the needs of the outside world. Our learning shouldn't just be about the books and in the abstract, but it needs to respond to the needs of the world, to moral concerns. And if you study his writings, it's very clear that there are several paths to interpret something, and he chooses the path that is the most moral, that responds to human needs, without sacrificing the integrity of the text. And in fact, he likes to tell a story that comes from the Chabad tradition, so that's appropriate here. Yeah. That the first Chabad rabbi basically said that if you're learning Torah to the extent where you can't hear a baby cry, then there's something wrong with your learning. Then your learning isn't quite right. And so our Torah learning needs to respond to people's needs to respond to the needs of the world. And that's what Rav Amital stood for. So, in fact, this idea of living among those in need, those who are low, downtrodden, is, I think, also an idea in Sukkot. We move into huts, and everyone lives in a sense as if they're poor. Granted, when it rains, you come inside, so it's not entirely the same sense, but we get a taste of it. We get a taste of it to know that's what it's like, and I think that's how we know if we're oppressing people. But with empathy and humility, living with the low down and downtrodden like dew and like God. So the downtrodden, this all sounds very dark and painful, living with the downtrodden, but it isn't. So with her name, we wanted to tell Amital that when she truly loves all people, she'll see the beauty and light and color everywhere, in everyone. And indeed, Sukkot is man simchatenu. It's a happy time. We're not in pain and impoverished, but we're happy. And in all of its happiness and sadness, pleasure and pain, the world is a beautiful and colorful place. And if Amital ever forgets that, she can look to her name, Amital Colores. And she can look to her namesakes. So Dolores, Liliana's great grandmother, her name sadly described her life, for what Liliana and I know of it. She died giving birth to her second daughter. Her first daughter, though, is now the 92-year-old Abuelita Juanita, my mother-in-law's mother, and one of the most colorful people I know. And our prayer for Amital Colores is that where her great-grandmother suffered dolores, she will experience colores. And the story is that the two great-grandmothers whom I knew were, thank God, happier. The Anns, Savta and Jibabi, they were simple Jews. They immigrated from Eastern Europe and suffered whatever hardships come with immigration, and then only to have to raise their families in the midst of the Depression. But by the time I knew them, all of that was past. They were elderly and living in nursing homes. They were not at all pretentious. They were down-to-earth people, simple, loving, vital, and hilarious, actually. My Savta, my mother's maternal grandmother, would always sing. She had her own version of "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," which cracked me up. And we were actually talking about this yesterday. You didn't know that I'd already written that in my speech. So, and my G-Bubby, whom was one of the highlights of the year every year when we would go to visit her in Massachusetts or in Swampscott, right, where her nursing home was. I loved visiting her there. We would sit out in the garden and schmooze and talk, and she would take my hand. I was a little kid. And she would wave it and go, "What's the matter with your hand? What's the matter with your hand?" I loved it. And she was very funny. And these were the types of people who we want Amital Colores to emulate. Thank God Amital Colores has 3 living great-grandmothers right now. Liliana's abuelitas Dora and Juanita, who I mentioned, are in Mexico. And my grandmother, Bubby Francis, is here with us, thank God. We're all smarting from the recent loss of her great Zaidi Jerry, and we'll always remember her bisabuelos Job and Ruben and her Zaidi Beryl and Bubby Rochelle, who are here in spirit. From all of them, we pray that she learns to live a colorful life and among the humble, dedicated to God and to the repair of God's world. The Haftorah, it sounds like a stern rebuke, but it comes with some very uplifting blessings, and that's what we hope for Amital Colores. And so I'll conclude with them. So we hope that she'll fast, she'll deal bread to the hungry, and bring to the poor and those that are cast out, bring the poor and those that are cast out to her house. And when she sees the naked, to cover him. And does not hide themselves from her own flesh, from her brothers and sisters who are poor. And then shall her light break forth as the morning, and her healing shall spring forth speedily, and her righteousness shall go before her. The glory of God shall be her reward.
Amen. Mazel tov.